Hi, I'm Jim. Welcome back in my continuing quest to get reliable fuel tanks. They're a little bit bigger. This is the skin for the top. I got it all laid out. I'm going to roll the beads. Again, 4 sets of beads just like the bottom. The big difference is I got to stop short here for the filler neck, stop short here for the fuel gauge. I'm not going to record the bending and the rolling because it's not going to be any different than the last video. So if you want to watch me turn the crank, you can go back one video and there it is. Once I get this rolled, bent, and cut, it'll be a matter of cutting it to size, fitting the ends to the existing tank. Let me grab that. I shouldn't say existing tank, I should say the tank in progress. It still does that, but that's not fun. So that's where that's gotten to. When I did the rolling here, I tried pre-stretching the beads first. You can see it didn't make any difference. It's still like potato chip, but if I can clamp it down flat easily enough, when I get the top on it and get the top, attached along the front and back seams, you can't do that anymore, and it'll be flat. This is no worse than the first tank. Just as a reminder, the big difference here is that I am doing a lap joint. The first tank I built, I did a butt joint. That was a pain. This is going much better with the lap seams, and I can put it together with clecos and screws. So I got stainless screws for now. I'll just have to weld over the holes when I get everything else welded. So I will start fabricating that top sheet, and I'll bring you back when it's time to start putting this whole thing together. Then we'll have all of the bungs and fillers and stuff, and then it'll be ready to weld. Woohoo! Okay, so I got this end screwed in place with some stainless screws to hold it. These corners are going to be a problem because I'll end up with 3 layers here where those go together. So I just bent those temporarily out of the way. I think I'll end up trimming those fully. The top skin goes So at this point I spent probably 20 minutes fiddle farting around here. I'd get one corner in, another corner would pop out, and because it's twisted a bit, that doesn't help. I think I decided that some of the bends were overbent, so I tried to straighten those some, and then I went back to trying to fit it, and the twist again, fighting that, and clamped it down, and after 20 minutes I gave up and decided to take another approach, which worked, but at this point, a couple of months later, I don't remember what that other approach was, and I cleverly managed to not press record, so so something happened. I don't know what, but I did get it together eventually, and it turned out to be not such a bad deal doing that. But anyhow, I'll just let this run at high speed here and give you something to laugh at. So. Okay, I don't know if I forgot to press record or what. At this point, the pieces are essentially assembled. This isn't quite Still got some tweaking to do, but we're getting pretty close to getting, you know, it wants to rock, but I can hold it down square with this, which is, as frustrating as this may look, is way improved over previous efforts. Way. I think I have too much bend right here, so we'll take it apart and flatten that a bit, and then wrestle it back together. Yeah, once I get this fitting better, then we can start putting in clecos. And okay, so at this point it's sitting here. It's flat down on the table, so this is, the tank is flat and square. I just checked all the elements, checked it for square. This needs a little tweaking in the back. The front part of it looks pretty good, and I think what I'm going to do is put in a couple clecos along here, kind of lock this into place, the part that's fitting right, and then I can see about bending this up into place without screwing up my alignment up here. That's my theory. In fact, I might even replace these clecos with sheet metal screws. Let me throw some clecos in it first. And since I'm just going to be welding over these holes, I'm not being too fussy about where they are. Okay, I'll continue that and bring you back when there's something to watch. Okay, so I've worked my way along. I got it all pulled up here. Cleco didn't quite have enough pulling power. This bend isn't perfect, so I used a sheet metal screw. I got to do the same thing over here. And we just about have it attached. Okay, that's part of the problem. This corner is sticking out more than it should. Things have been moving on me. Okay, that will make a difference. Okay. So basically at this point, the skin has been coerced into being in place. Clecos across the baffle. I got to put a couple screws on the back. I'll do that, and then we'll talk about putting the big holes in it. Okay, I got it all fastened. And my theory is that when I take these clamps off, it should stay square and flat. I've got a little stress locked in, from forcing the sheet metal in place, but shouldn't be too bad. And yeah. Okay, so I can pick it up and move it around. Never in a million years could I have done that before the first tank where I butt welded it. So far I am 5,000% happier with the way this is going together because it's now a solid piece that stays flat. When we were trying to weld the previous one, I had clamps and I was holding things and I had a guy welding, and it was a battle every inch of the way. This, I replaced the clecos with stainless screws, and I should be able to just weld along these laps, and yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the big holes. Okay, according to my notes, this is a 2-inch hole centered here, and then I got this for the vent that goes there. Fuel sender goes here. Now this is basically just a universal fuel sender. They work. Couple of things to note. The hole pattern here is not, the holes are not evenly spaced. It only goes one way, so I've got it marked, with an arrow pointing towards a float, and I'll transfer the pattern to here and mark it which way it goes, and I'll probably screw this down before I weld it. Then everything is lined up. And the other thing is, when this being a tail dragger, it sits, this corner here is the absolute high spot, and this sticks up above the tank, so it's possible to get essentially this thing, about a half an inch under the top of the fuel, and they tend to seep. At least the ones that were in the original tanks when I bought the airplane, they leaked fairly leaky. Fairly, they were definitely seeping a fair amount of fuel. Now that sending unit was mounted a little further back, so it was a little deeper, but what I did is I took them apart and put some sealant in around the screw and under here and under there, and was able to get that resolved. And I'm just going to assume that I'm going to have to do that with this one. So this has got to come apart, and that will make it easier to mark everything here. So I'll get some hole saws, and we'll mark this onto here. Yeah, I'm feeling like we're getting to the home stretch. Okay, I didn't have a way to record the welding itself, so I took a bunch of pictures as I went. I'll just kind of narrate my way through it. I start off, I did quite a bit of practicing before I started welding, and then I started on the tank for real, and this is how far I got before I actually dipped the tungsten for the first, but not for the last time. This is one of the plug welds or rosette welds here. That came out, most of them came out decent. One thing I would do if I was doing it over again, I was trying to minimize the number of screws that I put in. But what I had a couple, you'll see a couple I had trouble. I should have put screws in like right there and right there, just so that the metal underneath couldn't sink away from the surface. Yeah, there's one that gave me trouble. You can see it sunk in and it got contaminated, and I fought with that one. I think originally I just had that screw right there. I ended up, putting screws next to it and doing as much grinding as I could, and I salvaged it, but it's not what I wanted. Here is a tank, and you can see I kind of just welded in chunks here and there, and then I did the rosette welds. This is the one that really gave me trouble there. Welded up some of the screw holes. And here I've got most of one side welded. I'd weld a few inches, move somewhere else, weld a few inches, weld a few inches, to keep the heat from building up in one spot. Some work on the ends. This is where the fuel takeoff will be. In this area here, you had the top and bottom overlapping and tucked inside the end caps. So we had a bunch of metal there, but that part came out okay. There's one of the screw holes that I need to fill. Another shot of something, probably the other side. There's the rosette welds on the ends of the tank, the sides of the tank, and the screw holes welded shut. There's one of the places where I welded the joint in the flange. This is the side of the tank. This is the flange that got bent over. The flange was cut there, and there was a hole right there, round hole, so I didn't crack things. That weld is pretty ugly, but it's not leaking. A lot of crap, a lot of stuff in the weld, kind of dirty. I don't know, maybe I stuck the tungsten again there, I'm not sure. There's more of it welded. This was the kind of thing that I had, that last slide that I had just welded up. And there is either the front or the back. Oh, that must be the front because I'm not seeing the hole. So that must be the front. Almost all welded up. I got a couple holes to weld, and then these here. And one of the corners. There's another shot of an end with the screw holes. At this point, I believe all the seams and all the screw holes are welded up, and you can see the holes for the fuel sender, the filler, and the vent. When I welded it, I welded the pipe for the filler on first, and then for the vent. I should have done it the other way around because this was massively in the way when I tried to weld that. There's the end. There's the bottom. I don't remember why I drew that arrow. It's for the sump drain. More of the same. This is one of the areas here. A couple more screws would have been the smart thing to put in, but what I did, this metal here was kind of sagging away from the flange, and you'd think I would have known enough to just stop welding and put in another screw and draw it up tight, but oh no, not me. We're going to push on, and just got a big, massive, ugly mess of weld there. There's one of the rosettes. So this is the ring that goes around the fuel sender. I clamp and a couple screws to hold it into place. I should have put all the screws in, I think, before I welded it. It did move around a little bit. Here you can see this tack broke when I put the next tack in, and judging from this black, I must have dipped something again. I did that more than once. And there I'm setting up the filler neck to weld. Again, this was massively in the way when I put the vent thing there. Since this is relatively small, I could have done that first and it wouldn't have been quite so much in the way there, but, well, you live and learn. At least I hope you learn. First tack there, another tack, and I put the C-clamp in here to keep the tank tight against the pipe. Another shot of that. Somebody dipped the tungsten there. I don't know who. There is the reinforcement for the filler neck, the fuel sender unit all welded around. And there is the filler neck all welded, looking down inside. This little lip here looks bigger in the picture than it does in real life. And the first of the bungs, I hadn't really practiced welding these, and I'm thinking, like steel, you really, this is a pretty heavy wall on that compared to the compared to the tank wall thickness. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to put a lot of heat on the, on the thick stuff and not so much on the thin sheet metal as I weld it. And now that didn't quite work that way. And as you can see, I kind of destroyed the bung. Now I kept on, I finished welding it just to get it done and for the practice and see if I could get the rest of the way around. Since I've taken these pictures, actually at this point today, I cut those off and welded new ones on, and I just need to leak check those. So that's been replaced. That's not going in my airplane. I do have some standards, but I was able to get it welded the rest of the way around without more problems like that. Here I kind of cleaned it out with a Dremel, and then after this I ran a tap into it just so I could plug it for leak checking, because I wanted to do all the leak checking first and then come back and fix it. Here I am flattening the reinforcing piece for the fuel sender unit. I ended up, even after this, I took a flap disc in my angle grinder, flattened it a little more with that, and I got it pretty flat now. There's one of the bung for the sump there. Getting a little bit smarter. I dropped a bolt through it for a heat sink and in a way to hold it down. That bung went about 1,000% better than this one down here that I wrecked. And there's how that one looks. A little garbage from the bolt, but it looks like somebody dipped the tungsten there. And here's some pictures inside the tank. This is one of the screw holes that from holding it together. This is obviously a flange. I'm not sure exactly what angle I'm looking at here. I think the next pictures are a little more obvious. Yeah, this is the tank. Like the tank bottom is here, the tank end is here. Here's the flange, the joggle that I bent into it, and then this is the tank sides and that seam that I welded up there. You can see some of the places where I welded up screw holes. Here is, I obviously got a little bit carried away welding, a little too much heat, and it sagged on the inside there. But and that's some debris from drilling and stuff, it looks like. But I'm not seeing any really awful stuff. That's about the worst that I see inside. There's another shot from the inside. Another inside shot just for the fun of it. And that's it. So next up we'll do the leak check. And as I mentioned, I've already cut those bungs off, replaced them. And I need to run a second leak check to make sure those don't leak. But let's move on. Okay, at this point the tank is basically welded up except for the bungs that I need to replace. But before I cut those off and do that, I'm going to run a little leak check here. I've got the compressor set on less than 10 pounds. Hard, it's the bottom of the gauge movement, so I can't give an accurate number. Got a spray bottle of soapy water. So I'm going to pressurize the tank, hit it with soapy water, find all the leaks, and hopefully if I identify all the leaks that are there now, I can make one trip back to the welding table, replace the bungs, and fix the leaks all at the same time. So let's see what happens. Okay, so I got a spot here. You can see it. It actually looks like it cracked right next to the weld. I'll have to fix that. Come on. You can do this spray bottle. Here we go. But other than that, okay, I'm getting some leaks here. I didn't even hear it. Okay, some of these screws are oozing, but that's right around the screw. I didn't put a lot of goop on those, and it hasn't had a chance to set up, so I guess that's something I need to work on. Actually, given the fact that I don't know what I'm doing, I think this has turned out pretty well. This rosette weld here gave me a hard time, but it's not leaking, so... Okay, so I got a leak here. You can probably see it bubbling right there. And I got a leak up here. That's in the seam, not in the bung. And it's a little bit around this plug, but I don't have that real tight. So that's 1, 2, about 4 leaks. Yeah, okay. So, like I'm sure a professional could have done a better job of welding and put this together without any leaks, but I can fix this. And so at this point, I think I'm going to call it a wrap for the video. I'll cut off the bungs I need to cut off, weld up the leaks. I don't think I'm going to revisit this in terms of more video unless something exciting happens. So I've already covered putting the tank in when I did the first tank, so I hope you found this at least entertaining, if not helpful. And if you're working on a project like this, I hope you have learned from my mistakes and it goes well for you. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the flip side.